Let's call this meeting to order. This meeting and all the meetings of the committee are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin statutes, so the citizenry may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of the meeting. A roll call.
Gunderson,
Here.
Gage,
Here.
Licky.
Here.
We do not have Megan Bain, Tim Potratz, Kelly Bayman, or Dewey Stelzner.
All right. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the October 11th, 2016.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting for October 11th, 2016.
I'll second.
Make a motion in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. We have no citizens to make an appearance, so discussion.
Yeah, you might want to just make a note, we do have Mr. Van Epps with the lake group.
I was gonna get to that the other one, but go ahead.
There you go, so I mean, there's citizens that are here, Mr. Harley with the baseball group
All right.
had been invited, and as we're talking about the comprehensive recreation plan, you'll hopefully see them.
I
as
was
they
gonna
come in.
mention it when we got
There
to
you go.
that point,
There you
but
go.
that's good enough for
Sorry.
that. All right. Discussion on future events. Well, we're still holding this for Dewey. Before long, that event won't be future, it'll be past, and we still won't know what he actually wanted to do, but
We could maybe reach out to him, I'm assuming we're gonna have a December meeting, so at least we can have maybe a
Yeah, I'll talk.
preemptive discussion going into next year, and then we can have something to report on,
all right.
nothing else.
Other than that, we're looking at 4th of July, which,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and any other events, man, I don't know that we have anything at the moment.
No, I mean, there's various things that we work with, the holiday parade is coming up on December 3rd. Typically, we get the lights at the tree at the library, and I believe that they start, or there's a focal point at the library, and they walk downtown, so that's an event that we're contributing to. We would have the fireworks, typically with all the events in town, horse and buggy days. We used to have Summerfest, we don't anymore, but there's things that we're working on
Okay.
to assist with, I guess.
Good enough. Then let's get into the corp plan.
And I apologize, the last meeting I did not attend, I watched it 3 times. And Jessica Beckendorf from UW Extension was able to attend that meeting. So I do have some of the groundwork on what she had laid and getting this process going. Just for Mr. Harley being his first night that we're doing this, I did meet with him, I did talk to him a little bit about the process we were gonna have here. But it's essentially our 2004 comprehensive outdoor open space and recreation plan. Typically this is a 5-year plan. To be considered current, it has to be 5 years, within the last 5 years it's been either created or updated. Rather than spend a lot of money on a process, what we've decided to do is review the plan and update it accordingly. So at this last meeting, Jessica had talked about demographics, verifying whether or not the demographics have changed, stayed the same. With the demographics, the thought is that they probably stayed roughly the same. There's goals in this plan that are set out accordingly. Those goals probably are still relevant today. But what we were going to look at doing tonight was, I believe staff and I had been asked to review table 4 and table 5. So there was a proposed project list and proposed land acquisitions that were laid out. Pages number 22, 23, and 24, so it's the very last pages. But if you have a monitor in front of you, I do have a highlighted version of that project list that I will just go through. If that's okay?
You know, if you'd like to move over here where you can see a monitor, or
Oh yeah, it's up on the, there you go, it's up on
Oh,
the
yeah.
screen too.
all right.
One of the other things I'll have too is I do have an aerial up and we can get in pretty close. So I mean, as it relates to the park, what I'll probably do is just point out some of these areas as I'm referring to the project plan. So just running down the proposed project list, what I've done, I did not verify whether these amounts were accurate, verify the actual year that these things were completed, but what we basically looked at was roughly between 2004 and today, have any of these things been addressed? So if they've been highlighted, either they've been fully addressed as it's mentioned here. If it's partially highlighted, it means that it was partially addressed somehow, but we'll get through there. As it relates to community park, and I'm not going to go into the high priority, medium priority, low priority. Hello there. You have a copy of, you can watch on the screen, otherwise Mr. Harley has a copy of the plan we're talking about updating. You can take it with you if you need to. So again, just reviewing these projects, what we're doing here is they were laid out in 2004. There was a 5-year plan from 04 to 09 to see if they'd been addressed. And what we've done is reviewed, have we addressed these on any level? And so that's what we'll go through. Additional modular play systems at the big community park. There are some play systems. The area we're looking at is, you can see my arrow, it's down behind the Legion shelter. There is a modular play system here. I'm going to find a better way to flip back and forth here. This will probably work. Number 2, expand parking. There's 2 projects that we had done up at the park. One is in this area here, the main parking lot had been patched and seal coated, and Cedar Corp had indicated that when we did that, we had done some line painting and uncovered additional parking spaces that way. The other thing that we've done, which doesn't show up on this map here because it's about a 1.5-year lag on this overhead, is we had contracted for these tall trees to be removed, and those on the city council will remember, but the reason we did that was because AAA Hardwoods had advised us that we were getting to the end of the useful life on the lumber, and so we're running into a situation where if we remove these trees, we could get paid for the lumber as opposed to having to pay to remove every tree. And so rather than having $25,000 expense to clear that, we ended up getting paid about $3,000 for the lumber. So the net difference there is essentially the benefit we have. We had that area cleared. We have roughly from this area where my arrow is, we've roughly turned it into like a gravel parking lot. The southern half of that lot, we had seeded and put in something of a temporary drainage pond in this area. So again, it's a parking upgrade. Now we put it in gravel because we had figured that down the road here, the city is probably going to have to upgrade or expand Emerald Street. And when we do that, if we have to turn it from a 1.5 lane road into a 2-lane road, we would then address that parking lot. Probably 2 to 3 years down the road. But for right now, we do have an expanded parking right there. Project number 3 that was outlined for the community park was establish a shuffleboard in the shelter. We're not aware that that had been addressed. What I'm assuming they probably would have done is painted on the concrete shuffleboard area. Number 4 then was to resurface the tennis courts and replace the nets. Outside of potentially replacing the nets down there, I don't know that we have anything that shows that we did this work between 2004 and today. When it comes on number 5, repair south shelter number 2 and stabilize. That is the Legion shelter, and in the time from 04 to today, because we've added a shelter and taken one off the inventory, we've renumbered that to shelter number 3. So moving forward, we'll get those more adequately numbered. But that's the Legion shelter. We did take a look at some of those columns that are holding that up. Number 6, install a Frisbee golf course, develop a paved walking trail. Within the last year, we did talk about the Frisbee golf course idea at the rec committee. I can give you an update. I did talk to Bruce Gage about this a little bit, but there is the possibility for the disc golf course at the school to be potentially relocated to the park. And they had talked to, there was a student who had that as like their senior project, and that student would be open to the idea of having it reestablished at the park. It's also a maintenance issue that the school had talked about. If they were able to get it to the park, they said they'd be open to consider that. So there is a possibility to do that, to get that Frisbee golf course installed in some form or fashion. but we haven't gotten it done to date. And that trail that runs up through the woods is not paved, and it's through the park, it's not paved as well, so that had not been done. Number 7, there were not lights that were installed along the walking trail. Number 8, and this is one of the key areas where we had reached out to the youth baseball group. Number 8 here was the fencing and ballpark improvements at the baseball diamond. And what they had set aside was $50,000. And they set it as a medium priority between 2006 and 2008. With 2 representatives that are here from that group, they would probably be better able to comment on whether that improvement had happened. I'm inclined to say I don't believe $50,000 worth of fence work had been done up there.
I don't think that you mean to say it was set aside either. They estimated
So
the cost
it
to
was
be.
set aside as a priority project with
Right.
an estimated cost.
Right.
Right,
You-
so
you
now
said
we're not
it's-
talking about
You
the
said
budget.
they set aside 50,000, and no, we did not set aside
In
anything.
terms of this project list, that's what I'm saying. I know where you're going, but yeah. The other thing that probably should be included in here is lights, because that's an item that would be addressed, should be addressed when you're looking at ballpark improvements. Up at number 9 then, we're looking at shelter number 1, which is the Lions shelter, it's the enclosed shelter. We do not believe that they had installed new concrete, but they definitely had washed and painted that shelter, so that's where, when we talk about partial work, you see that's partially highlighted there. So on the proposed project list, these are the items that we believe had been addressed, these are the items that are out there yet, and the big item that is not included here, which catches me off guard a little bit, is the swim lake. And so it's not, it's as part of the park, you would think that upgrades and improvements to the swim lake would either be sitting on their own, or they'd be part of the park, and what you don't find in here is
Anything.
projects. Now, we've taken on some projects, we've done some rehab on the swim lake building, fire department had helped, getting some soffit painting, we've replaced diving boards, a lot of the pumps, we've been trying to get a better, more efficient chemical system, pumping system in there. But you do not see a lot of those items here, they're definitely park and recreation related, so that's one of the things that's missing here. Any questions? You know, we're kind of doing a 10,000 foot overview on the different locations. Any questions on that? Again, this review here is more of a review on what was in the plan, whether something got addressed or not. So if we're going to go into adding the swim lake, going into the baseball improvements, I think we'll have a discussion at some point. If it's tonight, that'll be fine. If it's not tonight, maybe it's next meeting, I'll maybe defer to the committee on that. Otherwise, we'll move forward if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking then at the next item is Peterson Park. When we're talking about Peterson Park, I think everybody's familiar with it, but this overhead view will give you an idea on what land is actually owned by the city and what land is just land that's leased. So Peterson Park, over by the old beach house, which is right here, the city actually owns this section of the parkland right here. So it's basically if you take 2nd Street and Lakeview, right off the edge of the land there, this is the section that the city owns. Now, the water frontage, you would consider to be part of the park, and also the section of the park where there's playground equipment, you would consider to be part of the park, but it is owned by the Kaminsky's. The city pays their property tax bill as like a lease payment, and I had mentioned this last night at I think at the Public Works Committee meeting, but the problem we've run into here is, I'm not sure that the city has a lease. So I don't know that there was an agreement in place on a lease. Now, that's a good thing in that you're not locked into paying a rent there, but the bad thing is, any improvements we have here technically aren't on our land. So if the city had paid for them, there's probably a concern there. Obviously, you don't want to build off of your land if you can avoid it. In general, the painted silo is right here. The city owns this section here. The boat landing would probably be up in the air for discussion on who owns that. I think it's also generally known that this warehouse building here is owned by the Kaminsky's. But when you put the layer back on who owns what, the concern we have is that it sort of inflates the area that the city owns. Because when you read the deed, it talks about the silo and just a short radius around the silo. And as the Kaminsky's, to our understanding, own this building, you'll notice here the label that's put on it is that this is somehow part of the dam property. So clarifying the interest on who owns the land there would be a very big thing. But one of the other issues, or one of the topics that we'll get into, is that the city has purchased 2.5 acres of land with this house here. And oddly, I believe that this was addressed as part of one of the land acquisitions in the court. So we do own some land. We're starting to develop some inventory here so that we can put some park assets in here. And then own the land, not have any concerns about building anything that's not on our land. So getting back to the project list, item number 10 here on Peterson Park is to investigate the removal of the old warehouse, which I'm assuming is referring to that red storage shed that we believe is owned by the Kaminskys, and install shelter with restroom facilities. The concern in this area here, again, is that we don't own the land that the park is on. And if you were to build something, I don't know that the city's in a good position because we don't have a formal agreement that we're aware of. And building anything off of our land is probably a little bit of a risky proposition. Now, that being said, when we talked about buying 412 Old Mill, the thought there was that that could be the site of a future public works garage 5-6 years down the road. But maybe more importantly, we could start to put shelters, restrooms, those types of buildings where you're still in the park vicinity, but it's on city-owned land.
That would be like, whether it's on the land we currently own or if we buy that lot next door.
Which
If we
is
build
in discussion. Yep.
a garage, it would be nice to put a restroom attached to it because our garage is gonna have to have those facilities anyway.
So what Nick is referring to is the city owns this big chunk right here at 412 Old Mill. The property owners at 410, which is right next to the park and right next to the existing land we own, have reached out to us to sell their property. And we may have a resolution on that within a week here. So there's a potential that we would end up with a pretty substantial chunk of land there to, I guess, reestablish our footprint in the park. To get to number 11, install modular play system protective surface. We have simple, maybe basic slides and swings at Peterson Park, so this was something that had not been completed. We do have some equipment there, but not the modular play systems. Number 12, riprap to shoreline along Lakeshore Drive. That, as part of the drawdown, I believe had been done through some grant and through efforts of the Lake Group. We did get the riprap on the shoreline, so that had been completed. Number 13, paint the silo in the city. It's my understanding that this is the time period when that silo had been painted.
Yes.
Whether it needs to be refreshed or repainted, I think that would be a fairly good conversation to have while we're updating this court plan. But for all intents and purposes, it's our belief that it had been addressed. And then number 14, then replace the seasonal bulk pier with the permanent pier, and it's our understanding that that had been completed. Because the two piers that are on the two sides of Peterson Park are permanent piers. So I'm assuming that in the past they had maybe the seasonal where we had put docks in and took them out.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we had marked that down, that had been completed. That would be it then for Peterson Park. As I mentioned, as we go forward with this plan, now that we're buying land, or that we bought land on Old Mill Street, maybe talking about more upgraded shelters potentially if we needed to, that would be a good thing to talk about. On the second page, then we're looking at Mill Street, Sumner, which is going to be across the street from the library to the north and to the east. So where well number 4 is. We have basketball courts, some swings, and north of the library, across the street, we have the tennis courts there. So one of the items was to remove those swings and replace it with a modular play system by the well. Those swings are still there, so that had not been completed. Number 15 then was to replace that tennis court surface off of Sumner. The note I have there is that we did replace the nets, but it's not our belief that the surface had been replace to the tune of $40,000, because that would be a pretty substantial.
I don't think it was for it. They did redo the surface, or at least top coat it or something.
Painted it or something.
Yeah, well, they put something over the top of it. No, it's. I mean, I think it was
a $40,000 replacement would be a pretty big.
Would have been
fix that I
ripping it
don't
up and
believe
redoing it or something. They didn't do that. They recoded it of some sort.
Yep.
Pretty good cracks in it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get to the Lake Street boat landing, modify the pier to make it handicap accessible. Now, it's our understanding that the pier had been modified when the lake was drawn down, but I'm not sure if it was just painted or what the modification was. This is off of Lake Street on the south side of the lake.
The Patrick County, Gas Club poured new approaches down for boat launching.
Okay,
But they didn't mess with the pier.
okay,
The pier still needs it, it actually needs work on the pier to make it handicap accessible.
sure,
Like that.
Sure. okay. Then we get to the old beach house area, which is part of the Peterson Park area that we own on the west end. Add topsoil and reseed sandy areas. Just in looking at that area, some of that I believe has been addressed, but it depends on what they're looking at as being sandy. Number 18, install fence to define park boundaries and add privacy for neighboring properties. As we zip over here, there is some fencing. Now, the problem is it's not privacy fence.
Right.
It's like chain link fence.
Right.
And there's a question on whether or not that is on the property line. So there is fencing there. It looks like it might have been installed maybe by the city to try to establish our park boundary, but these boundaries here don't match up completely. You'll see here, you can see kind of where the fence is. A lot of it is with this mapping too. Sometimes it's not guaranteed to be accurate, but you can see that there's a little bit of an offset there. But it's certainly not a privacy fence. It's an open chain link fence. Next item then would be number 19, build an open air shelter. Now, we do not have an open air shelter over here, but my question is, there is an open air shelter down the road, and now whether they're counting that as part of the western section of Peterson Park, or if anybody's got any idea what the age of that shelter is.
I think that's.
Has it been there quite a while?
I think it's older than
Okay.
2004, if I remember right.
Yeah,
That's been there
that's
quite
been
a
there
while.
for quite a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't they rip it down and put a new one?
Yeah, they refurbished it.
Boy Scouts re-roofed it, didn't they? On a project?
Yeah, one of the scouts did an Eagle
Yeah.
project there.
Okay, so in the beach house area, I mean, we don't have a shelter there. The number 20 then is to plant additional trees for park users. We have planted some trees in here. The problem is these three in that storm in 2013 had been wiped out to the point where we had to remove them. So the trees that we planted have not covered for the trees that were damaged in the storm. But we are looking into getting more trees in that area there. So we've planted some, we've also lost probably just as many. This is gonna be the end then, what we're looking at here for the project list. Up at the fairgrounds, the county has been doing their own projects. Now, if we would want to filter those projects into our plan, we could get a lot of that information probably fairly easily, but for these purposes here with the city, we haven't had anything. It's been out there. The North Shore 20-foot wide greenway, what we're looking at here is just to the east of Mill Pond Circle. We'll zoom out. Looking at Mill Pond Circle off of AA, there is a gravel parking area and a city-owned access. I will tell you that the city owns this here. It's an access right from AA straight down to the lake. So as it relates to some of the projects here, we have a gravel path, which is one of the projects identified. That's probably the only thing that we've done over there from this plan. We have not installed a pier at the end of the greenway, and we have an entrance with some parking, but it's not really definitively signed. So we have some signage that says, no cars down the trail, but it's not anything really advertised there. So now the obvious, for those in the council that have been kind of in the know on our land dealings, will know that these empty lots here, 21 of them, as part of a settlement on the development agreement, the city is going to be buying those lots within the next 2 weeks. So as it relates to parks in this area, one of the lots right here has a sewer lift station basically in the front yard. So there's some mention of a future park on the northwest part of town. There's a question here on whether this lot with that lift station right in the front yard is going to be an attractive lot, but it might be attractive for a park. We might even be able to fill people off the trail into a park area. But that's, like I said, this here is the sewer lift station. Whether somebody wants to build their house with that front yard is probably to be determined. North Shore Wetland Conservancy area, what we're looking at here is actually just on the other side of this 25 acres. The city owns 15 acres that is basically not accessible. Because we don't have a road that gets through here, we're blocked, here's the railroad tracks. It's a lot of low-lying area. There was a thought at one point that you could turn it into maybe a wildlife type nature area if you had extended 3rd Avenue. Maybe put a cul-de-sac in here or some kind of a trail or a path. Problem we run into, and this was a discussion when we were talking about the trails grant, is if 3rd Avenue would extend through the Weisman property, through the Potts property, this piece right here is part of this bigger field, but the odd thing is this strip right here is technically in the town of Weyauwega. So the reason we run into a problem with that is if there was ever a trail to be proposed through here, if the city would ever go to use like eminent domain to, I don't want to say take the property, but it's essentially a taking where the owner gets compensated. We can't do that if it's not city property. So in a way, this is blocked right here. So to run our street, you know, you can't run it through the town property. That's where we're not very accessible here. But it's 15 acres that the city owns. The thought there was to construct and install a scrape for a wildlife pond. I'm not sure what scrape, what the term scrape means, and I don't know that I've gotten a definition of that from people I asked that would be in the know. But basically what we're looking at is some type of a public access in that area without developing it too much. The next item then is East Street right of way to the river. So East Street, the street ends at our lift station. We have a right of way down the hill to the river. It's sort of east of our treatment plant. It's not my understanding that we have a canoe launch there. While we do have a right of way, we haven't really developed a path down there. So that had not been taken care of. And then the other item that was out there was investigate opportunities to provide a skateboard park. There was a group of interested citizens that had been collecting some money that the city at one point was going to be holding on to. We, per the mayor's request, had done some research to try to find who had the money, how much was the money, is it still restricted to a skateboard park yet? But for all intents and purposes, the park never was built. What we're looking at was a plan to build a park. The cost on that was going to be like $65,000 to $70,000. But for this project plan here, it had not been completed. This last page then real quick is proposed park land acquisitions. I'll run through this quick, I won't outline this on the map, but the South Pine Street, currently in the town of Weyauwega, 15 to 20 years ago there was some thought that some land south and east of the city could be donated for some open space, sort of east of Pine, east of Rashke's. And in checking back on that in the last 6 months, we had been told that the current owner is a descendant of the owner back then and would not be interested in donating that to the city. So for the most part, that's probably off the table. Number 2 here, North Shore Lake in Weyauwega, a greenway and neighborhood park. One of the comments there would be if we're looking into a park either in that wildlife area that we own or for land acquisitions, it might fit more in with the Mill Pond Circle land acquisition that we're looking at. So that's sort of being addressed already. And it's being addressed right now as we look at this plan. Number 3 then would be somewhere on the east side to look in for a neighborhood park. We do not have that. We do own some land by our well, which is on East Alfred Street, and we have some open land there that might be available if we would ever look into a park. But we don't really have that site identified. And then number 4 then would be a location east of Peterson Park adjacent to the Weyauwega River. Special use of canoe portage. Well, this almost fits in perfectly with what we had purchased on Old Mill Street there.
Right.
So it's almost like we're following the plan. So in a way, with these 2 land acquisitions, you know, we're starting to open up some possibilities as we update this plan. So again, the city purchased 2.5 acres on Old Mill, and the city's purchasing 21 lots, with lot number 4 being a lot with the lift station, maybe conducive to a park. So the assignment for this meeting was to review this project list, the land list, and sort of give an update on what happened. And does that seem to be a fairly good conversation there? Okay. So with Jessica not being here, Jessica's steps then would be to take a look at the demographics, the goals we had in this plan. I don't know if that's something that you want to take a look at tonight, or if you have any inkling on which way you want to go with this plan. I think we've talked about this being a multiple month plan, but the goal would be that we're looking by March, April to have a new plan updated.
It is a multiple month project. It is unfortunate Jessica cannot make it tonight. I don't know how much we should go on without her. I mean, this is what we wanted to accomplish for tonight. I think the next step is to look at demographics to see where we are with her, you know, where we are, what we want to get to. So we, unfortunately, this may be it for the month.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the goals was to take a look at, did we follow the plan? And I think this type of a review is pretty good. It's a little bit dated because you would have hoped that back in 2009, we probably would have taken this up and reviewed it, but we didn't. And so we're here today. So a lot of these things though, even though we didn't do them, I think they're still relevant to be considered, because some of these things, if we didn't resurface tennis courts, they're that much older now and that much more in need of attention.
Right.
So those are things that obviously we're taking a look at and keeping, you know, being aware of. I don't know that I would call this an all-inclusive list. Like I said, the swim lake's not really on here. I'm not really a fan of this being an all-inclusive on number 8 for what needs to be done at the ballpark.
No.
Because I think there's quite a bit that could be done up there. Whether we just slap a $50,000 figure in the plan and then call it good, I don't know that that's appropriate either, but I would hope that with the representatives from the baseball group and with the lake too, that as we look at this, that they're gonna have some ideas on what can we address, prioritize. Other than that, I don't really have too much more to comment on, just reviewing the list anyway.
Anybody have any comments on it?
As far as the ballpark, how much time you got? There's a lot that needs to be done to the ballpark itself. You know, just the diamond area is in dire need. We have fencing that's buckling and curling. I mean, we got kids that have potentially get seriously injured. And then also the other very important thing is the lights. We got lights that are shorting out, shooting sparks. I mean, there's actually one light where to turn it on, we use a wooden bat to flip the switch because the box kicks sparks so bad. We actually had one evening.
What kind of light is that?
That is the one that is east of the field closest to the pool. It's got its own separate box on the pole. It also has a dusk to dawn light on it. It is right by the entryway to maintain the field.
So you're talking like a street light, or are you talking a,
No, it's a field light.
It's a
So-
field light.
The pole has a street light on it as well, but the field light, the box where you turn the field light on, and you gotta use a bat or something, or,
If it's
Take a
got a
risk.
duster dawn, why are you turning it on with the baseball bat at all?
no, the dust dawn is, for just a street light, I believe, right?
Yes.
And so when it comes nighttime that we have to turn our lights on, then we have to flip those on, and then there's a separate box for that pole as well, so.
Junction box.
Yeah.
And it's updated how you have to use the baseball bat, or you do it because
No, we do it so we don't wanna get shocked.
lock it out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
nobody turns it on.
Yeah, that's what we started doing, we just stopped. turning
No,
it
but
on.
lock it out.
Right.
Put a padlock on it
Yep.
and keep the key. It's,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
that's a violation that you can't have.
right, and then,
Yeah.
first light off of right field between third and home plate. Had a game going one night, it sprinkled a little bit, and the lights literally popped. And we had shards of glass on the field, and we had to shut the game down because of the hazard. You know, them are just two of the major things, the fencing and the lights. And then when you go off behind second base, there is probably 3 to 4 inch drop off,
Oh,
because you walk off the back of the field there into the grass and it drops significantly. You know, we're worried somebody's gonna be hips turned looking for a ball and step wrong and get injured.
And what caused the,
So my experience with that is years and years of, it depends on how the field gets dragged sometimes. That if, and I don't know, I've had it growing up, I was in field maintenance and played ball and those types of things too, but if you would drag the field and sand kind of gets pushed to the outside,
Yeah.
a lot of times you can get a lip that way. I don't know if that's exactly what this is, but I do know that
I think
in
it's,
Weyauwega, we had a good 8-inch lip that you had to come in with like a sod cutter and just cut it out and then try to get that leveled off.
Yeah, us.
But it's certainly a
going
drop,
out.
like you say.
I think it's, for that particular field, I think you're exactly right, because there's been a couple times at least a couple times that new dirt has just been dumped on. So
Yeah.
then it just gets spread out and it's out there and there's a lump.
It's
Yeah.
not
And
on
then also
purpose or
it's the
anything, it just
contour of the
happens.
actual field.
Yeah,
well, you're,
Because it's on such a hill there,
Right.
it's
Water runs off.
downhill,
our
so.
whole part
So,
of
so it's a
the
combination, I think, of both those things
Right.
within that.
Mhm.
You know, just speaking as the president of the baseball board, and we want to kind of cooperate and work with the rec committee, because we see the potential out there for being able to kind of grow the little league programs and things like that. One of the struggles we're having right now is we just don't have the field space. I mean, we literally would not be able to add really many more teams on, maybe 2 or 3 more teams on before we would just be maxed out. And that was with us running games at Fremont, Weyauwega, over at Vinker Field, not the games, but practices over at Vinker Field and things like that, trying to utilize every little bit of space we could. And so it's becoming, logistically, it's becoming a very difficult process for us with that many teams, both little girl softball, little league, or traveling leagues, and then the older boys leagues, working all those things out. So we would like to kind of work with you guys and kind of address some of those concerns and develop a little bit more of a partnership, because I think there's been some confusions about what the baseball board has put into as far as buildings and stuff like that go and things like that. And so we're wanting to kind of, we're just wanting to kind of define everything and work with you guys instead of fighting against
Well,
anything.
that's a huge thing, because as long as I've been on council, right, there has not been a lot of communication. But in actuality,
right.
you are a quasi extension of the city, and you are on city property.
Yep.
And so there definitely should be much more communication.
Yeah, and we want that. We want that very much so, because this is my first year on the baseball board, and you know, I got somehow rigged into being the president of it. So thanks, Dan. So, But, you know, just the first season was like, wow, this is an immense undertaking, you know, it's not like it's the football, which they do a great job, or the basketball where, you know, you've got multiple teams and you're having to do different schedules and stuff like that. I mean, it just grows exponentially. And so, you know, we're looking for as much partnership as we can to kind of, and these are just regular citizens that are trying to do it. And Dee has been a great asset through many, many years of kind of running that and taking that. So we're very interested in working with and cooperating and working with the city and trying to figure out what's going to benefit, you know, the city, and what's going to benefit basically the citizens of Weyauwega more than anything. So,
Patrick,
Yep.
can we get, now that it's off season, and hopefully before the snow flies and shit, or things get really ugly,
Yep.
can we get TLC out there to inspect the lighting?
So that's one of the things I did meet with Mr. Harley. One of the areas when you talk about communication being a little bit better is, so a lot of times when there's something that's wrong, TLC would get called, but then when they'd send the bill, sometimes the city would get a bill and we didn't really know what they got called for, and then sometimes the baseball group would get a bill, and then the question is, so who was supposed to pay? So I think, especially when it came to the idea of using the bat to turn the lights on and off, the first I had kind of heard about it was when he mentioned it to me, and it was already after baseball season. So that's something that knowing
bothers
about
me
it,
to
I'm
no
not
end.
sure if
Right.
TLC
what bothered me, we
got called
wouldn't
on
let
it, but-
anybody else. We wouldn't let anybody else do it because we were kind of
One of the things I do is I instruct OSHA outreach training,
sure.
right?
Right.
That sends chills down my spine to think
Yeah,
that anybody
I get it,
was
so.
doing that. So,
So the big thing is who should be called, who needs to let us know, who calls TLC. That's one of the
Well,
things that
we're
I'm
the only
really
ones
happy
that should
we
be
were able
calling
to talk about
TLC.
that.
okay, because the park is city property.
Right.
And everything on there is city property. So, I mean, obviously, quality of life, we want recreation. There's nothing more important than that. But we need a centralized front. So anything like that's done should go through Patrick so that we know where the billing goes, we know what's going on. And for safety purposes, because it's not only the kids playing, it's adults that might be using the field, it's picnickers,
Right,
it's
right.
anything that's going on.
Yeah, because I think it was the men's league who
Yeah.
called TLC.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not,
But it doesn't matter
it,
who.
it doesn't matter who,
Right.
It
right?
should be communicated to you,
Yeah.
so that way you can say, okay,
Right. There should
call
be a
TLC.
springtime meeting or a
Yep.
winter meeting of any group that's gonna be playing in the field.
yeah,
You know, that.
no, I agree.
This is what, we need to set some ground rules
Yeah.
so that we make sure that everybody's safe.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, we open to that. We're open to that conversation
Right,
on
yeah,
that
yeah.
because the way things have been going, it's, you know, we pick up certain calls for certain things, and then you know, then the question is, okay, priority on the field, who has a priority? The men's league has Thursday nights, you know, and just kind of working all those logistics out. And one of the things that Patrick and I talked about is then, and I've instructed our board as well, is that no communication goes to the city except through the president of the baseball board.
And that's,
So
that's good.
everybody comes
That
and
helps,
and
yeah.
then we filter out, okay, yep, that's something we need to go, and then I send it directly to Patrick, and then Patrick disseminates that information to
This
whoever
group,
needs
but-
it, so.
That's excellent. That's excellent. We need, we need to define those things.
That's why I made him president when he was.
Yeah, there you go.
Good choice.
Is there still talk about changing that around, or?
Well, yeah, in a perfect world, it would be
Well, I
fabulous
know,
to turn
but,
the field, you know,
One of the topics that came up with communication was over this last summer, I think I had 3 or 4 different people stop by me and said, hey, the lights are in need of maybe repair or replacement, the sun comes down in a certain area.
Horrible, yeah.
And so then it was, should we replace the lights and leave the field where it is? Should we turn the field, and which would be pretty substantial renovation, or should the city be looking to build a new field somewhere else? And to solve the light problem, the sun problem, those are all good options, but 2 of them are pretty substantial. And
Can't you get the sun to go the other way?
yeah,
right,
maybe.
right.
You know, or, you know, can you put up a shade or something like that to help? So that's where just having this type of line of communication or having a meeting like this where they're here
You're right.
at the rec committee while we're looking at our rec plan and what are we gonna do in the park, that's gonna be, I think, the
Right.
best.
The
I know.
short-term thing is to
Really good.
fix the lights, the long-term thing is to change the field,
Right,
right? And not that they're both not possible, but,
right.
Yeah,
you
oh,
know,
for sure.
you have long-term or short-term, that's when we need to get together and do these things,
Yeah,
so that we can set out goals.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think one of the things too is to keep in mind, and Dave probably knows a little bit more about this, is that there has been some interest expressed from some members of the community to kind of help us with some of that cost and things like that. I don't know exactly what the conversations were within that, but definitely some interest in, they see the condition of the field and our interest, and let us put in there and put some work labor in there.
Excuse me.
So if that's something, then that might be a good time to kind of strike while the iron's
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah,
so
yeah, as long as it's in a focused
Sure.
Right.
plan for sure, because yeah, I'm aware that there's some interest out there too, and I think it'd be awesome to take advantage of it. I think
Right.
it's dumb
But
not
you'll
to.
probably never get there
You need
unless
to.
you get goals and plans going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Randy Folks was up there
Yep.
August, and he was a little disappointed at how, you know, it's kind of showing its age, and
Well, it's
Yeah.
probably as old as 71 or 72 when that park was built,
it is.
so, I mean,
Yeah.
I want to say, talking to a lot of the, you know, elders that I know started the league with Mr. Oddie and, you know, Doc Mosh and all of them, I have quite a significant history I've collected from talking to the gentlemen that are still around. You know, it's been there for quite a few years, and, you know, it's.
71 wasn't that long ago.
I'm 45, honey, and
I
I'm
was
born
born
in
in
71.
It was
So,
before me, so.
I was born in '77, so
Speaking as our elders, it's about time, that was just a few days ago.
you know, and like you said, setting the short-term goals along with the
Right.
long-term, I think it would benefit our community because I go to several baseball diamonds around the state, and, you know, that ballpark you know, I mean, people go there and they look at it and they kind of go, you know, because I've seen some really nice ball diamonds, which a lot of it's facial, I mean, you know, with landscaping and stuff like that, and some fields have had quite a bit of a facelift, but it is also a representation of the community.
And there's
It's a
lots
very
of,
big representation.
You know, I mean, especially when I go to these huge tournaments, and you're talking, sometimes there's 20 teams there from all over, you know?
Right. It's as big as what the lake is, and all these
Right.
things tie together into,
Right.
sure.
You said this program is growing exponentially. Is that one park enough? I have two questions actually. One park actually enough, and if not, does a high school have a baseball park to use or could use?
So right now our growth is limited because of the fields.
So you could actually use.
One park, you know, probably what would be, I mean, in the ideal world, it would be great to continue to use that park because all the facilities that are there. But then adding a smaller, more little league field. Adding something in there that's got about 160, 180 foot footprint as far as from home base out to the fence, which is kind of the standard little league size. I mean, that field is set up at a very large size, which is great for the men's softball and everything else. But if we had a second kind of field there, then that would help out a lot because our concessions are there, the swimming park's there. You know, it's kind of the central hub of Weyauwega, you know, as far as during the summer. That's where I have 4 kids and they go down there and they get out of mom's hair for the day, you know. So I think having at least 2 ball fields were there. The baseball fields at the high school field we can't really use. One of our for the younger ages, but our older.
Our Babe Ruth and our Legion League play there.
And
They
they're-
have 90-foot bases that are not adjustable.
yeah.
City Park is 45 and 60, so they're adjustable. You know,
And
you
they're
don't
very-
have, you go over there, you don't have that.
Right.
And they're very protective because they got that new infield put in
Right.
from, you know, which we completely understand that piece of it. The softball program, they've been extremely generous with us, working with stuff. I mean, we utilize the kickball field for practices, which really is not conducive for practicing any type of ground baseball, you know. We use, you know, bigger field, the practice field. So, you know, we're trying to utilize everything we can. And those are fine for practice fields to a certain extent, but ideally, you know, a second field. And we intentionally moved to have some games in Fremont because we are the Weyauwega Fremont youth baseball, and it's not right to force all those people to kind of come over to our side of the river here. So, you know, that's one of the things is we're interested in, you know, exploring all the different options and what is really financially feasible for the community, you know.
I'm not sure how we build another field in the park without taking away from parking and something
Right.
else.
Yeah.
Right, that's the
I mean,
difficulty.
Yep, yeah, so,
Well, if you went to build that shed at the outfield there, you know, we could have turned the ball field and put a little field there.
Well, but that building was already there.
I know,
And
I
you
know.
have the drainage pond there.
I know.
Which is there to stop the parking lot from eroding.
Right,
So, I mean,
no, I got
yeah,
it,
you know, it's always difficult.
thank you, Dee.
right.
Thank you for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Dee's my historical advisor too, because she knows everything about everything in Weyauwega. So.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
So definitely on the lighting,
Mhm.
short term to get TLC to look. I mean, we need to know an inventory of what needs to be fixed, and
Yep.
that's probably going to have to go into Parks and Recs anyway.
So one of the questions that I'll have for TLC is typically at the beginning of the year, we have them come out and tune up the scoreboard, take a look at the lights too. And so if it's a situation where every year they've got to replace the same bulbs or whatever, I mean, maybe it makes sense to have a little bit more of a bigger overhaul on some of these light issues rather than having to pay to keep replacing it, especially if it's a safety issue.
Yeah, you can, Tom, if you're watching this, as a fire chief, I want to know how long it was like that. And,
Yeah,
Now then, do a little research on LED, if you're gonna replace them with different fixtures.
Yeah, for sure,
Right.
for sure.
yeah,
Keep the cost way down, I mean,
Yeah.
way
Way down.
for
Right.
the energy cost. And also, they're actually a better light, how they are for baseball, I'm not sure that's something they have to research.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that right now it was getting towards where we would have to call TLC because when it got towards the later evening games, there was time where, you know, it'd be very hard to see that ball. And the other piece too, I think, is a really good point is that sun coming in does present a problem for a big problem for our catchers and everything else. I mean, because you know, I don't like catching for a pitcher when the sun's at certain angles because I can't see anything. So, you know, and for the batters as well, that's been, and for the fans as well that are sitting behind looking. It's, you know, you're for probably a good 15-20 minutes every day. The game has to kind of be carefully played. So
for 15 or 20 minutes, it's probably more feasible to look into some sort of a sunscreen that we can raise and lower, as opposed to
yeah,
turning field, which is a
pretty big.
Substantial.
pretty big
it'd be kind of a
thing to do.
headache out there, there's a lot of rock in that area.
Yeah,
And,
oh, for sure.
And to go in there and
Yeah,
Right.
get in there bulldozers and do something, you're gonna have big headaches.
yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is a line of communication that you and Patrick will
Yep.
keep
Yeah, we'll
open, and
definitely
Patrick will
work with
keep
you.
open with me, and we'll
Yep.
work through these things, and
Sure.
you know.
Perfect.
All right. Let's move on then to a review of the budget for 2017.
So what we're looking at, we've got it summarized here, but we've addressed the general section. Public safety section will be at the next meeting tonight.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Yep.
It was very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
I hope to see you again.
Yes, you will.
The public works section we did go through last night, line by line. What we're gonna look at here relates to leisure activities and education. So the library, there is an increase in the library section but this is the total library budget. It's proposed to be about $171,000. The city's share of that has remained the same, about $105,000. The difference is made up by Weyauwega and Weyauwega counties. So the increase here is directly related to the increase from the county's share. Ours has stayed the same for the last few years. This next line item here is community center. It's a line item that we've carried through the last couple of years, and we'll now be able to apply it towards supplies and expenses at our community room downstairs. This is the $1,500 that we used to pay the Legion because they had senior meals and then would have activities. So that $1,500 we would repurpose probably towards any supplies that we would need or any supplies to run some activities in that room. So that should be a good thing. Recreation, this is basically tennis and ball field maintenance. We're looking at about $1,800 because we did look out at some brand new nets. We did a little bit more maintenance this last year, so we are a little bit above that amount. I would anticipate that we'll have a budget amendment coming in December to make up for that extra $300-400 that we've got there. But if we're sitting about $1,800, that seems to be a good number just for maintenance items on the ball fields and the tennis. Anything more substantial with the lighting would be considered a capital project, so that wouldn't be, just because we have $1,800 here doesn't mean that we're only spending $1,800 at the ball field.
Right.
We get down to the swim lake. We do have some bills on chemicals and some concessions that we do need to post yet. So the $43,000 is not a final. I would anticipate that in December we'll have a more final report on our concessions, gates, admissions, things like that. But one of the issues we ran into this last year is we're trying to become more efficient with that. And while we pump in chemicals, we don't really filter, we don't really circulate it in water, we're pumping chemical in. Now, we're trying not to pump too much chemical to try to save some money, but we're also trying not to, turn it into a swamp or anything like that. And that goes back a couple of years. The discussion we had with the county health department was, are we classified a pool or are we classified a lake? And the answer we got was, well, you're not a pool. So in a way, there's not really a set of standards for us to run this. If we ran it as a pool, we'd have to upgrade a lot of the filtering, pumping, and we'd be bringing on a lot more expense. But because where we're at here, we've got maybe a little bit less standard, and it's not really a swimming pool, it's a swim lake.
Right.
So it's a hole in the ground with water that we pump chemicals into, and then we hire lifeguards. July 4th weekend, we had run out of some of the granular chemicals, so lifeguards will sprinkle granular through some of the shallower areas. Ran out of it on Saturday. Sunday was hot. By Monday, it was starting to turn green, and trying to catch up on that seems to be more effort and more chemical. It takes more days to try to catch up on that to just get that out.
You don't want to fall behind on it.
So that's part of the problem we had. I think if we had an amount here, we're looking at just increasing up $500 up to $49,000. As you look back here, we were at $53,000 in 2013, and so as we've been trying to pump less chlorine, less chemical, we rerouted the piping so that we're not chlorinating at the top, so that it might just burn off. We're chlorinating from the bottom of the deep end. And so we're doing some more efficient things there. We also have a new water line that we put in a couple years ago, so that if we need to fill the swim lake, we don't have to fill it with water that's got chlorine in it. We can just run and fill the water and lift it up if we need to. So we're trying to get in that area where we're saving money and running it as efficiently as we can. And I can tell you that at times we are skirting with the line on having this turn green. And if it turns green because you have a day where you don't get a lot of the chemical in there, it takes 3-4 days to try to catch up for that day. Now, the same time that we had this with some of the green and some of the algae, a lot of people that have swimming pools deal with the algae and have the same type of thing. But around that same time, the weather is just conducive to where lakes are blooming a little bit more too at times. So we're trying to stay on top of that. In general, we have about a $50,000 expense, and we look to take in about $15,000 to $20,000 in revenue. So the net on the swim lake is that it costs us roughly $35,000 to operate this. Now, we did see a dip after August 1st because that's when we had the incident. with the drowning at the swim lake. Now, the 2 to 3 weeks we were open after that, it seemed as though the attendance had dropped off, so, which is probably a natural thing when you have an event like that. But we're hoping that going into the new year that we can rebound and that we don't have any lingering effects on that end. So, as it relates to the expenses, I think $49,000 seems to be a fair amount. It comes to other recreation, that's been a zero line item across the board. Technically, we could probably delete it off of here because I'm not sure exactly what the other recreation topic would be. Celebrations and entertainment, we're looking at $7,000. What we take out of here is $5,000 for the fireworks, which we put on July 4th. We had reduced this amount from years past because we used to pay $1,500 to $1,800 for that garland that we put out for the holidays. So you'd pay that much money, then you had to try to get rid of it, and if you didn't get it down quick enough, it was brown, and it sort of defeats the purpose of having it up if you can't get it down right away. We went to those banners, we spent $700 on the banners last year, so the thought is that we'll have those banners. It's a lot less than $1,800, and it's certainly a lot less than $1,800 per year. So what we'd probably like to do is add to the banner collection. You know, if you go to a more seasonal set of banners, there's some communities that will have spring, summer, fall, winter. Right now, what we've got is the seasonal with the silo for the summer, and then we have the happy holidays for the winter. So that's where the $7,000 would be in that celebrations and entertainment. Down to the next item, then parks and playgrounds. Roughly what we're looking at is $23,500 for our operating up at the parks. That covers the water, the electric bill. What's interesting up at the big park is that we have 1 meter on a light pole. And so if we would go to LED lights in the ball field, we'd certainly probably see a reduced energy cost, but we wouldn't be able to go out and say, here's how much the ball field was and how much it went down, because essentially we get 1 energy bill for the whole park. Now we save money because we only have 1 meter, but we're not able to measure the swim lake and see how efficient we're running that way. You know, we kind of look at the park as a whole. Now, when you put in LED lights, you put in maybe VFDs or variable frequency drives on some of your pumps, you can just assume that you're getting some efficiency there, but in general, you know, of course a little bit, but that $23,500 has been, you know, roughly a good number for our park and playground maintenance. Other than that, that's pretty much what we have for the recreation side. When it comes down to the revenue side, there's just a couple things that I'll point out really quick. It's under charges and services. We do look at the swimming pool fees, which is our revenue at the swim lake. We had increased to $20,000 for 2016 because at the time we had been hopeful that we may be able to turn a summer school program at the swim lake where we could get a better partnership with the school. We had raised some of our rates. Unfortunately, and we don't have all of the figures closed out here yet for the swim lake, but unfortunately we didn't hit the 20,000. What I'd look to do there is to back it up a little bit to 17,000. I think that would be an appropriate revenue number. Shelters, when we rent out our shelters, we had increased those rates because we put in the new shelter. We increased the rates across the board for this year, and we're seeing that we're getting close to hitting. Obviously, we were at about 2,800 before. We had aimed for 3,700. We're getting up in into that realm, so I think that's a good thing there. And the $3,800 number is a number that I feel confident with. Next item then, which is really based on some information we have, based on the senior meals rental amount, but it's the community room rent. It's this top line item. The county is paying us $350 a month to rent out the community room. That will get us to $4,200 if my math is right for the year. And then our rental rates for people that just rent out the room are $20 an hour, $80 a day, $25 if they want to use the AV equipment. So what we're hoping for is 10 days where somebody rents it out for a full day at $80 a day is going to get us from 4,200 up to the budgeted number of 5,000. I think 10 days is reasonable. Now, once we can get the word out that this is available, I'm hopeful that we can get up in the $6,000 range, but conservatively estimating, I think 5,000 is a good number, and that's a new revenue, because we haven't had the space to rent out with the community room, so. Other than that, that's about where we're at with the recreation budget. Any questions at all? It's pretty straightforward, I think.
It is straightforward.
What we've been doing as each section has come and gone with Public Works, with the general section, is we've asked for a motion from each committee just to recommend approval of their portion. So it would be the leisure, recreation, leisure and education section. If you feel it appropriate to make a motion to recommend approval of that?
At our leisure, huh?
Yes.
You won't do it, otherwise I will.
I make a motion to
Okay.
approve it.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the 2017 budget. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that carries.
Thank you.
All right, administrator report?
I think I talked quite a bit on the corp, just an updated, keeping that discussion going, I think is gonna be very important. Having the community partners here with Mr. Ben Epps and with the baseball group, I think is gonna be a good thing too. I think as you probably gathered, just communicating and making sure that the right people are talking to each other is key.
It is
And I feel as though we're in a good spot with the baseball group on that, so I'm
good.
feeling good about that. But other than that, we'll look at in December, a more full report on this one, like,
All righty.
for the year.
All right, so the December meeting. How's everybody feeling about Tuesday the 13th?
Real good with me.
6:30 again?
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, I'll throw my pen at myself. Are there any other such matters as authorized by law?
No?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Okay.
All right, we're adjourned at 7:48.
Thank you.